Aloha and welcome to what is the fourth webcast of the COVID-19 Business Assistance Series. My name is Annette Lynch. I'm with Maui Economic Development Board, the host of this series, which is supported by the County of Maui Office of Economic Development. We greatly appreciate their support in putting this series together, which is put together to assist businesses like you to get access and assistance to all the resources you need to help your business get through the current situation and beyond. And today we'll be particularly focused on ag businesses and loan relief programs for such. Before I introduce our speakers, I just got a little bit of housekeeping to go through so we can use this platform easily. We do have a Q&A tab, and I've noticed that a few people have popped in some comments there. If you can put your questions in there, we won't be taking questions from the chat. So at the top, you've got chat, you've got Q&A, you've got polls. Use the Q&A for your questions. And you might scroll through the questions and see if there's a question already that's related to what you were going to ask, so we don't have the repetitive questions, and you can vote on that. And so we know the popular votes on the questions are the ones we really more people want answered. So that's the Q&A. And this is all on the right of your screen. We do ask you to participate in the polls. They came up as you entered the meeting room, and we're looking to see how much land you have that's designated for farming. And we've got a few responses there. The primary use of your land, and we're seeing a predominant answers for dairy, livestock, and other, and number of employees, and also how you heard about this webinar. So we've just got a few replies there at the moment, so please take the time so we just know who's here on the call. So that is my, let me just pop the slides back up and make sure that none of our other presenters are using any of the various buttons, so that we just have myself using those. The webcast will be being recorded, so if you know other people that want to attend, or if you want to review all the information, we'll be sending out details of that. That will be available tomorrow, as of tomorrow, and we'll be posting that on MEDB at the mauibusinessassist.com link, and we'll also make the slide deck available straight after this webcast, so that again you've got the tools and resources and guidance that you need. So I'm just going to quickly pop this slide up and allow Gerry to go through and to introduce our speakers. We've got Gerry Smith, Director of Business Development with Maui Economic Development Board, and accompanied by Wong, the Director of Small Business Development Center. And we have a couple of speakers from the USDA Farm Service Agency. So Gerry, do you want to introduce the speakers?
Sure. Patrick Lewis is the Chief District Officer, and he's on Oahu, but then our two local guys here are James Robello. He's the County Executive Director, and Richard Buddy Nichols. He is the Farm Loan Manager for Maui County FSA, and so both of these guys are your contacts right here on Maui. So today, these are the things you're going to learn. We're going to learn who's eligible for these different types of loans. There's 5 different ones that we're going to cover today. 2 are from the SBA, one's from the state of Hawaii, one of them is from the USDA, and then the FSA microloans, that's again from USDA. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to review these different loans, tell you what the purposes of them are, how they're slightly different from each other, and more importantly, for you to actually go and apply for these things. We want to try to take something that's a bit intimidating. I know applying for a federal grant or a federal loan is a lot of paperwork, and so we want to bring that down to earth and make it as simple as possible, so that it's not intimidating at all. And what's really important is that there are some loan products that are available today, and there's some loan products that are going to be available in the future. And we want to prepare you for the ones that are coming out in the future. As a matter of fact, that's kind of what the probably the biggest focus today is going to be on one that's going to come out, and that's called the CFAP. That's the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. And if we go to the next slide, we're going to prepare you for that one today, and but that one's not going to come out until sometime in the future. So I want to set the stage here real quick about guidance and funding. So those are two different things. So in terms of guidance, what we're talking about is direction from the government, whether it be state or federal government, that tells you how to actually go about incorporating the rules of how to apply for these things and what interest rates are, what terms are, all the different rules that come down in terms of, we call that guidance. And so I've got these upside down triangles here, and I'm starting at the bottom with CFAP. We have very, very little guidance so far from the federal government on that one. The EIDL and PPP, we have quite a bit of guidance, but we're operating under what they call interim final rules. And so what that means is they're not the final rules. And so sometimes there's some disconnects between one section and another section. But we're operating under interim rules, so at least there's some rules published. For CFAP, no rules published yet. And then for HELP, that's an acronym that I made that up. It's the Hawaii Emergency Loan Program, and I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit later. But that one has very solid guidance, so the rules are very clear. So let's go to the next triangle, and then we're going to talk about funding. The next, I'm talking about the next triangle over. So in terms of funding, the Hawaii Emergency Loan Program has several millions of dollars of funding in it. The CFAP has $16 billion involved, and the EIDL and PPP are upwards of $650 billion at this point. So I just wanted to set the stage and say, there's some things that we have very clear guidance on, and some that we don't. But what we want to do is prepare you as best we can for the ones that don't have a lot of information on them. So let's jump to that next slide. So we're going to start out with Wayne Wong. He's the director of the Small Business Development Center over here on Maui. Really good guy, and he's going to talk to you about two different loan packages. These are SBA loan packages. The first one's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. The second one's the PPP. Wayne, take it away.
Thanks, Gerry. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is the first product, is really, as it says, it's a disaster loan. If you've ever worked with the SBA previously, you know they've had disaster loans all the time. This one's cool because it's an economic injury. We don't have to have an actual physical disaster. It's a low interest working capital loan, and this will be very different from the next product I talk about, which is the Payroll Protection Program. So this one is really flexible in terms of how you can spend the money. You can use it to pay fixed debts, payroll, other bills, basically working capital. The only other caveat is that if you decide to get this and the PPP, you have to just make sure that this is a federal concept in general, that you can't pay the same obligation with more than one relief product. So that's what they call double dipping. So if you're going to be paying payroll with the Payroll Protection Act, just make sure that on your economic injury loan that you're not paying payroll at the same time. The interest rate is 3.75, and it's a 30-year amortized loan with 1 year of deferment before your first payment is due. The SBA determines its loan size, and there's an interesting aspect to the disaster loan in that they decided to also put out there an advance which turns into a grant. So while the bulk of the loan is a loan that you have to pay back, the first advance, which is based on $1,000 per employee that you register, just becomes a grant. And it's money that is sent to you. When the rest of your application comes through, you can actually decline it. Even if you're denied, the grant is yours to keep, yours to use. There's no real strings tied to it. You don't have to report on it or anything. It's just money for you to spend. The one thing that you should understand, though, is unlike other loan products, because it's a grant for the first advance, it is a taxable income, so you have to keep track of that. We have down here that there's no fees, which is somewhat true. There's no cost to apply. So even if you get denied, you don't have to worry about any costs. However, if you receive a loan and the loan is over $25,000, there is a UCC filing that has to happen, which is a $100 fee that you will have to pay. And then the money for this comes from the Treasury. So the application is made directly to SBA through SBA.gov, and the bank is not involved in any aspect. Next slide. So who qualifies for this? The very great thing about this is that they had such a big influx of applications that they had to close the system for a while. Meanwhile, there was a lot of uproar because agribusinesses, other than aquaculture, had specifically been exempted from being able to apply for this loan. So when they reopened it about a week ago, they actually are now exclusively opening it for agribusinesses. So now farmers and any other agribusiness can go ahead and apply. The requirements for you are that you are officially registered as a business, that you've been in business for over a year, and that the owner has invested equity. So, it can't be just an investment type of thing. And then there are a lot of self-certifications, which all of these loans have, which, basically says that you don't have any outstanding child support issues against you. You don't have any criminal offenses, and you are a U.S. Citizen, although you can actually, as long as you are a U.S. resident. So if you have a green card, you still are eligible for this. Next slide. So how do you apply? Pretty easy. You just go online, and the URL is posted right there. And again, as we said, right now it is exclusively just for agribusinesses. All the other businesses that try to apply are going to get kicked out. And if you look at the required information when you go through these web forms, it's pretty easy. I mean, you just have to show some proof of registration that you are a legal entity, and then identify the equity owners. Tell me how many employees you have, and then just what your annual sales are, cost of goods sold, what your expenses are. And then if you want to get the advance, which is the piece that turns into a grant, you need to supply your bank account information with routing number and account numbers so that they can do a direct deposit. And that's pretty it. I mean, essentially it takes less than 30 minutes to go through the whole application. It's all done online. Next slide.
Hey, Wayne,
Okay.
before we
Yep.
jump off this slide, I just want to point out that there's a link down there at the bottom on the left-hand side. It says MEDB EIDL resources. Wayne and I have done numerous webinars already, and we did one specifically on how to apply for an EIDL. It goes through all the forms, it answers a lot of questions. So if you decide you're going to go for an EIDL, if you want more resources, that's the link to check down there at the bottom.
Yeah, we're flying through these things pretty fast today because we've talked about these so much. And so those links are great because those you can go back and hear all the detail about these. So the second product is the Paycheck Protection Program. And you probably have heard a lot about this because there's been so much of this in the news. It was touted to be the savior for small businesses. And when it first opened up, there was sort of this gold rush mentality. Everybody had to get in there because they knew the money was going to run out. So the background on this is that it is a loan. And the interesting aspect to this is that if you meet certain conditions on how you spend the money, it is a forgivable loan, meaning that you don't have to pay it back. It's a 1% interest on a 2-year term, but your first payment is not due until 6 months. You can get up to $2 million. So when this first came out, it said 10 million. We had a lot of problems with large companies applying for this. So now that was dropped to 2 million. This does all happen from the SBA, but through banks. So all your applications are done through your local bank, whichever is your bank of choice. And then most recently, they opened it up so that You can actually apply through some credit unions, and you can also apply through what they call fintechs or financial technology companies. So these are companies such as Square, Cabbage.com, QuickBooks, and those have turned out to be much more efficient at processing. I know I just talked to someone on PayPal. They got their loan processed in 24 hours. Cabbage is known to be done in about 48 hours. So it's a nice alternative. So originally 349 billion was set up for this. That was gone in 13 days. They allocated another 310 billion on actually that's April 27th. And so there's still about 120 billion left. So it's starting to go out much slower. The loan amount is something that's calculated based on your average monthly payroll cost. So you provide that number and it's multiplied by 2.5. There's no fees, there's no cost to apply. And again, there is this forgiveness clause that says within the first 8 weeks from when you get the money, if 75% of the loan is paid into payroll costs, then the whole amount of the loan is forgiven.
And just like the other webinars, there's a webinar that's dedicated to the forgiveness alone. That's all we talk about in the webinar is how to turn that loan into a grant. So if you need that, again, there's the website for it.
So next slide. So who's eligible? Again, officially registered businesses, and again, small businesses that meet the SBA description, generally less than 500 employees. And then there's a whole bunch of nonprofits and tribal businesses that are also allowed to do this. They also have opened it up to sole proprietors and self-employed. So even if you're a band of one, the nice thing is that you can apply for this and you're the one employee. Now, the thing to remember about this loan that is different than the disaster loan is, as the name implies, Paycheck Protection Program. The focus and how you can use this money is really on payroll. It's ended up putting a lot of people in sort of a strange situation because they've gotten the loan. Now that they can bring their employees back and put them on payroll, except that they can't open. So what do you do with your employees? And strangely, that's not a consideration in this program. It's to get them back on payroll. What they do is totally up to you. You can redeploy them. You can, have them do things that you need to do, like marketing and so on, or fixing up your facilities or things like that. You can even pay them to just stay home. But the point is to keep people paid. So that's what's a little bit strange about this loan. Well, not strange, but what's restrictive about it is that it really is geared to paying employees, whereas the disaster loan is a working capital, full-on working capital. Use the money, whatever you need to keep your business in business. And then how do you apply? Basically at your local bank. And everybody's doing it online. So even if you go to Central Pacific Bank, if you go to cpb.bank/PPP, they have an online application. And to help you out, we also put the link here for the actual online application form so that you can print it out and fill in all the pieces so that when you get to the web form, you know what to click on, you know what numbers to put in. It just makes it go a lot faster. And the required documentation is just the application form, a calculation of what your monthly average cost or what your payroll cost is, and then the number of employees in terms of your headcount. And these are all based on your 2019 numbers. And so having documentation to prove those numbers. IRS Form 941 is the quarterly report on your employees that you normally send in. So that's a good way to show it. If you're self-employed, 1099s or your Schedule C, or in the farmer's case, it would be your Schedule F. And then you can also, if you use a payroll provider, they can provide that documentation as well. Next slide.
Next slide is me. So that's
Great.
Thank you, Wayne. That was great. So there's two different programs, and like Wayne said, you know, you kind of look at one as payroll and the other one as everything that's not payroll. So that's kind of a way to keep those separate. And it's true that you can apply for both of those. And I've heard of people who've gotten both. So the next one we're going to talk about is not a federal program, it's the state program, and it's the Hawaii Board of Agriculture. They created an emergency loan program. So let's find out about the program. So on April 14th, they approved an emergency loan program to provide assistance. And this is important, the wording of this is important because this is the one that I said that had a lot of guidance. And so the program is in place. It's an emergency loan program to help qualified farmers affected by the economic impacts as a result of this COVID-19. Whether you were selling to a restaurant that no longer has patrons, whether you know, there's a lot of different revenue losses that you could have suffered in this last little couple of months. So there's a maximum of $150,000. And then there's micro loans, which are, and I'm sorry, that's the wrong facing thing. It's anything that's less than $25,000. Micro loans are just easier, quicker, faster ways of getting through and don't have quite as many complications in terms of applying. So the maximum amount you can get from the state on this one is $150,000. The terms are decided on a case-by-case basis at 3%. This one's very interactive with the loan officer that you're going to be dealing with. This is kind of interesting. So what they've done is they've created this loan with a no credit elsewhere requirement for anything under $100,000. So if you apply for a loan under $100,000, this can be the first place that you apply. If you apply for more than $100,000, anywhere in the range between $100,000 and $150,000, you are going to need one credit denial. So you're going to have to go to a lender, your lender, and have a denial before you can apply for this one, as long as it's over $100,000. Anything under $100,000, they've waived that requirement. On the next slide, I will tell you about the 3-year residency requirement, and you can apply through December 31st, 2020. So this one's going to go for quite some time. Let's go to the next slide. So the state defines a qualified farmer, and this is from their website. There's 3 different qualifications that make you a qualified farmer in the eyes of the approval process for this loan. The first, that you must be a citizen of the U.S. And have resided in Hawaii for 3 years, or you're a permanent resident alien, also has resided in Hawaii for 3 years. Big line right through that because they've waived that requirement. You no longer have to fulfill that requirement. Second requirement is you have to have a person of proven farming ability who has operated their own farm for 2 or more years. That's, again, strike through. It's been waived. There's only one requirement for a qualified farmer under this program, and that's a person who devotes most of their time or derives most of their net income from the farming operation. I would say the way that you would prove that is through a tax return that shows that most of your net income was through a farming operation. So it's pretty straightforward, but you're going to need to prove that through documentation, and that documentation is going to come from your taxes. So let's go to the next one. How do you get one of these? How do you apply it? Well, if you look kind of down there in the general forms area, there's several forms. There's a loan application. There's a microloan application, which is easier than a loan application. These are all links right here. So, by the way, this PowerPoint will be available to you, and so you can click on these links and you can review this stuff at your leisure. There's going to be quite a few documents that'll be available to you, and I think, are they at the I think there's some at the handouts now. So if you want to go there, maybe Annette can talk us through that. But the handouts are up on your screen right there too. So the forms are there, the links are there, but how do you apply? My recommendation on this one is read the text at the very top there, because that's what comes from the Board of Agriculture's Emergency Loan Program website. Prior to obtaining and completing the loan application, it is recommended that you meet with or call a loan officer. They're available to assist you in determining your eligibility and to guide you through the application process. So for this one, the first thing you want to do if you're going to apply for this is you're going to pick up the phone. And so for our Maui County residents, Oahu and Kauai, the phone number is right there on the middle of the screen. By the way, I meant to say this earlier, but I wanted to give a shout out to some of our friends who are over on Lanai and Molokai that are joining us today. And I just wanted to say hi, you know who you are, and thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to be able to assist our Maui County Islands, of which there's more than just Maui. So let's take a look at the next slide. What have we got going here? The CARES Act. And so I'm gonna pass it over to the folks from USDA. We've got James, we've got Buddy, and we've got Patrick Lewis. You guys go ahead and unmute your mics, and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Gerry. Hello, everyone. I'm James Robello, County Executive Director for the USDA Farm Service Agency, serving farmers and ranchers on Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. I'd like to welcome everybody here and thank everybody for tuning in today. I've been working for the agency for almost 25 years. We have 3 program areas. One is crop and livestock disaster assistance. The other is conservation, and we also have a farm loan program. For those of you who have not participated with FSA in the past, now is the time to start building your basic farm records. Later on the webcast, we'll learn how to do that, and our contact information is up on the screen here, and it's in the end too. So if you want, give Rochelle or I a call, and we'll be happy to assist you. Okay. And
yeah, I'm Buddy Nichols, also here on Maui. Fourth generation farmer, farmed forever, like 40 years before I started working for the government. At any rate, my background is, you name it, I've been there. And so we do farm loans. So during these periods of times, which we know happen every 10 years, just traditionally, it always is. So we have the opportunity to use the funding from the government in order to get us through these tough times, in order so that we can get ourselves back on course. So at any time, our present interest rates right now is like 1.75 for operating loans, 2.625 for farm ownership loans. They're designated so that when Mother Nature comes and spanks us with a hurricane, lava flows, drought, floods, whatever happens, we have the opportunity to manage through that, because we know that Mother Nature always brings us off to the backside, and our opportunity is even greater after the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity, and that's what we're seeing right now. Right now, Maui County has something like 18 applications in here that we're working on. We've done over pushing $5 million worth of loans already this year since October, and we just keep going and blowing because farmers are so resilient, and so great opportunity, great option. And when grants run out, you actually get an opportunity to get some funding to start a new program based on new marketing and new opportunities that are out there for us. So that's what Farm Loan is, and here we are.
So I'm going to give you kind of a bird's eye view on the coronavirus program. As Gerry mentioned, I'm Patrick Lewis. I'm the Farm Programs Chief for Farm Service Agency for Hawaii and the Pacific Basin. I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the mood lighting that I have going on right now. I feel like I should be telling you all a scary story instead of talking about programs. But just so you know, we have a program that's directly going to be related to coronavirus relief. It's called the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. Some of you may have been on an agricultural marketing service webinar this morning that provided some very brief details, or received some of our information that's come out mostly today, but in the last couple of days, about the program itself. So, you know, we're really going to be looking at prices and supply chains that were disrupted during we're looking at the periods of January through April and then trying to make a projection through the rest of the year. So like Gerry mentioned, we don't know a ton about the program right now. We've got a couple of slides here that give you the best information we have today. And then we're really hoping to get our heads wrapped around the program at the local level and start signing you all up soon. Everything that we're hearing is that it's going to be a pretty streamlined application for federal government standards, something that should be a little easier for you to come in and take care of. And then I will say that down there at the bottom of that slide, that is very important. CFAP is going to provide assistance to most farms. We're looking at a 5% price for marketing loss. And it's going to be regardless of size. It's also going to be regardless of sector. We are going to be making payments to livestock as well as crops and stuff in between, specialty crops, row crops, all that good stuff. So we think we're going to be able to touch every aspect of agriculture here. Next slide, please. So again, CFAP has two parts. One that FSA is doing, so Buddy will be doing for you folks on the 3 islands, and then I'll be helping out from the state office here in Oahu, is the direct support. So we're going to be making payments to you folks, in order to offset those losses. As Gerry mentioned, it's $16 billion is what we have nationwide in order to do that. So we should be able to give everybody what they're eligible for, and that would be the best thing. And then the other side of the program, FSA isn't doing. It's actually more the agricultural marketing service. They're actually going to be purchasing crops and commodities and then getting those back out into hard-hit communities, whether that's through food banks or direct assistance, that sort of thing. So I know AMS has been working on that right now. I think they've already even listed out the folks that they're going to be buying from. So they would be the place to go look for that. So what can you do right now? That's really going to be what I'm going to tell you about. We don't have the formal application yet, but what we know is that all of our eligibility is pretty much the same. We require the same 6 or 7 things for all of our programs and for the majority of farm loan programs. So that's what I'm going to focus on here in the next couple of slides, are what those things are. It sounds like we may or may not need to get you actually on a farm. I'm going to say it's in your best interest to do that. If you decide to participate in another FSA program or try and get a farm loan, we're going to need to get you on one of our farm numbers, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. So even though you may not need it today to apply for the coronavirus program, it's a smart and relatively simple thing to do. And so like James mentioned, I'm going to talk about establishing that farm record. And then we historically haven't on the program side, I should say. So James and I work on the program side, Buddy on the loan side. Program side folks historically, generally, do not need tax returns or Schedule Fs. That story isn't the same for farm loans, and it may not be the same for us for CFAP. We'll know more, and then we'll let you all know. So right now, all of our service centers are open, but we have very limited staffing, and we're not allowing customers in the door. That's for your safety and for our safety. We're trying to get through this as best we can, but today you can't go to the office in Kahului and get this done. So if you have good internet access, or you're willing to do some stuff via the mail, you can get this process started. James and Rochelle will ship you all the forms. You can get them online, and we can go from there. We'll take everything electronically. You don't have to print it out and mail it if you don't want to. We will need some signatures. We've talked a little bit about e-signatures, so if you got questions on that, I would give James a call and he can walk you through. Down at the bottom there, just as the first thing you're going to end up having to do is either going and finding our forms and muddying them through them, or giving James, Rochelle, or myself a call. And then you're going to need some stuff. You're going to need, if you farm as yourself, any information about that, your social security number, your farm structure, what you actually farm, what you pulled out of the ground. If you farm as an entity, and I'll get into this a little bit more, like an LLC or something, we're going to need that information. And then we're just going to go from there. So next slide, please. Okay, so here's kind of the meat and potatoes of what I'm going to talk about. On the next slide, there are going to be 6 form numbers, and these are the most basic things that we're going to need from you. We're going to go through each one of them, and I'm going to highlight some important things, as well as provide you some more information. And the last thing I'm going to do is talk about how we get you on farm, how we get you an FSA farm number. One thing I'll say now is that all of these forms have a second or third page to them that is going to give you definitions of some of the terms on the form, as well as explanation and instructions. So while I'm going to kind of hit the most important pieces, or what I consider to be the most important pieces on the forms, you know, the form itself will help you get through the rest of it. And again, you know, our job is to help you with that. So if something doesn't make sense, or you have a question, please get a hold of us. So the first form that we're going to look at is the AD 2047. It's the customer data worksheet. So this is the first thing that we need to get you into our system. And basically what you're going to tell us is name, address, contact information, as well as social security number. And then if you have an entity, again, you know, you're going to give us that tax ID number. And then on the next slide, one of the things that is extremely important is going to be question 4B. Are you willing to let us use your email address and put it into what we call Gov Delivery, but it's our email blast system. So back in the day, we used to have printed newsletters. I say back in the day, but it was really only a couple of years ago. And so we used to send out paper newsletters to everyone in our system. We can't do that anymore. So now we rely on this Gov Delivery service. So it's strictly voluntary. It's up to you. But if you give us that email, we're going to send you a couple bulletins a month plus a newsletter. And what's going to be in there is when the program starts, when you can sign up, what you're going to need to do to sign up, and when the program sign up ends. So that's going to be really important information, and that Gov Delivery system is going to be the easiest way for us to get that information to you. If you give us your email, much like all of your information, it stays with us. We don't give that to anyone. We don't sell it. You're not going to get an email from someone else saying that they got it off Gov Delivery. It's just going to be from FSA. And it will be from FSA, maybe from the national office if they feel like something is important and needs to come out, but we're going to hold on to that information in-house. So that's really the gist of the 2047. Okay, so the next one is the CCC 902, and this is our farm operating plan. I threw up the one for the entity right now, but the individual one is a one-pager and it's very simple. So, and it has a lot of the same questions. So here we're going to talk about what the entity is. So if it's Patrick Lewis Farming LLC, or something like that, ABC Farming Corp, whatever it might be, you're going to fill out that and its address. And then you're going to tell us what kind of entity it is, as well as when it was formed. Another thing is James is really going to want the formation documents of your entity. You know, who can sign for it, who is the agent, where is it housed, all of that good stuff. And then if you've had member changes through the years, it's going to be really helpful to provide us the latest set of corporate minutes so that we know the most up-to-date member information. And the next slide is really going to hammer that home. So here's why. If you have an entity, we need to know the shares inside. We do all of our eligibility down to the warm body. And so if I'm Patrick Lewis Farming LLC, we're still going to go look at Patrick and Caitlin Lewis, who are the two members, and make sure that they're eligible for our programs. And this is where you're going to tell us that information. So you're going to give us the name, tax ID number, the share that they have in the entity, if they have a position in it, president, secretary, vice president, whatever it might be. And then if they're family member relations, and then also who can sign. And the reason that we're going to ask for the corporate docs is that we're just going to bounce it against what you put on the form to make sure that if we get something from you, it's signed by the right person. There are two more things on the 902 that we're really looking for here, and the majority of the programs we do in Hawaii are really keying off. We have some special rules if you are a minor, so if you're under 18, or if you're a US citizen or not. We're not sure what those rules are going to be for CFAP. We do know that the majority of our programs carry rules that are specific to those two groups, and so we need to be able to gather that information as part of our normal process. So the next form is the CCC 941. It's the average adjusted gross income and certification and consent to disclosure of tax information. So I put some arrows on the side here, and the Gerry and company were nice enough to clean them up for me. And so I'm going to go through each one of those and explain why they're important. So number one, that arrow one, that's name and address. And again, if you have an entity, Patrick Lewis Farming LLC, we're going to end up filling out one of these forms for the entity itself and one form for each one of the members. If you're an individual and you just farm as Patrick Lewis, you just have to do one, easy peasy. So arrow two is going to be the program year. This year, we're obviously talking about program happening in 2020, so you would put 2020. A bunch of our programs require an annual certification. So if you come back in next year around this time and you want to sign up for something, we'll have you fill out one and put 2021 on there. So arrow three on the right-hand side of the form, this is where you're going to put your tax ID or your social security number. And you're going to want to put the whole thing in there, and I'll explain why in a second. So arrow 4 is just where you're certifying that you're above or below the adjusted gross income limit. For all of our programs right now, it is $900,000 in adjusted gross income. That's not something that we can really help you with, unfortunately. FSA doesn't hire any tax experts, so that's really an accountant question for you in order to take care of it. And then down at the bottom of the form, which is on the next slide, is just going to be a couple of quick things. So this is actually where you're consenting to allow us to send this information to the IRS. We don't certify your adjusted gross income in-house. We load that you gave us the form, and then we let the IRS do the rest of it. So the IRS gets the original version of the form, and then we keep a copy on hand for our need. And so you're going to sign it in arrow 1 in that box right there. And then that middle box, the title relationship, only applies if you have an entity. So going back to Patrick Lewis Farming LLC, if I'm the vice president, that's what I would write there. If I'm just signing for Patrick Lewis as myself, I don't have to. And then finally, you're going to date it. You're just going to date it the day that you signed it and get it to us as soon as you can. So the next form is the AD 1026, and that's the Highly Erodible Land Conservation and Wetland Conservation Certification. All of our programs carry this requirement, and it's really looking at residue control. We're trying to make sure that the topsoil stays where it's supposed to stay, or that a wetland hasn't been converted after a certain date. And depending on the answers that you give us on this form, we're going to end up probably sending some information over to the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is another USDA agency that we co-locate with and does a lot of our technical work on the ground. It doesn't mean we're going to prohibit you from applying or you're not going to be able to potentially get a benefit out of the program. It just means we got to do some extra work with you to make sure that we are going to mitigate any issues that we might have. So again, on this one, you're going to have the name of the producer, which again, if an entity or a person, what have you, tax ID number, crop year that you're looking at, so this would be 2020. And then you're going to do affiliates. The easiest way to explain affiliates is if your spouse or a member of your entity has a farming operation on their own or outside of the entity or what you're applying for, that would be an affiliate, and they have to fill out their own form. Like I mentioned up top, one of the things that all of our forms carry with are explainers. I think the AD 1026, James can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the appendix is 6 to 10 pages long, and it really gets down into this. So you'll be able to kind of go through that and make sure if you need to have anyone there. The next two questions are about if you've never done anything with USDA before, you don't have land devoted to agriculture. So let's go down to the bottom of the form. Okay, so what I've highlighted in yellow, which is that question 6, is something that's really important to us, and that's highly erodible land. So it's asking in the last year if you have planted what we call an agricultural commodity without having NRCS do their technical work. An agricultural commodity for us is anything that requires annual tillage of the soil. So that's going to be green onions, sweet potatoes, lettuces, anything that's not like a fruit tree or a grass or a pasture, something that is perennial. And so if you are doing that, again, more power to you, that's fine. We just are going to need to do a little bit more work. The rest of those questions are talking about tiling and drainage for agricultural purposes, and it's the same sort of deal. Again, not necessarily a problem. We just want to do our due diligence. Now, down at the bottom, you're going to fill out what you're doing and where you're doing it, and part of that is going to be with the farm and track number that we're going to get you, and I'm going to talk about here in a minute. So the next slide talks about the CCC 860. That's the Socially Disadvantaged Limited Resource Beginning and Veteran Farmer or Rancher Certification. This is a totally voluntary form, but I will say if you fill it out and you meet one of the requirements on it, some of our programs give you a benefit. So some of them that do cost share, if someone doesn't have this form, they might get 75% cost share, and if they do have it, they might get 90. Or like on Buddy's loan side of the shop, there are specific targeted funds just for beginning farmers or SDA farmers or veteran farmers. So if you meet one of these and you're willing to fill it out, there might be a benefit, and there might be a benefit in CFAP too. We're just not sure yet. So first you're going to do, again, applicant, whether that's you personally or your entity. And then the first question is about socially disadvantaged farmer or rancher. And then on that form right there is a definition of what we mean by that. And if you meet one of those criteria, you'll check that box, turn it in, we're good to go. And then on the bottom of the form, it just goes through the other options. So for limited resource, the one thing I will mention is that's an annual certification. So if you certify as limited resource and then you come back in next year and you want to do a different program and you're still limited resource, you're going to have to recertify on a new form. Kind of tedious, I know, but just something we need you to do. And then the beginning farmer rancher or the veteran farmer rancher, those are good from 10 years out from either when you started farming or when you were when you were honorably discharged from active duty. And so those carry with them a timeline to it. On the 11th year, you're no longer a beginning farmer to us, for example. So then the last form I'm going to talk about is our direct deposit form. It's the SF 3881. So a long time ago, we used to send everyone paper checks, and then we found out that that was costing us really an obscene amount of money. And so to get with the times, we switched over to direct deposit, which is more accurate. It's faster. People get their money faster when we do direct deposit. It's better for you. It's better for us. So if you want to go down that road, you're gonna fill out the first part of the form. You know, who are we paying? Are we paying Patrick Lewis? Are we paying Patrick Lewis Farming LLC? And then on the second part of the form, you have two options. One, you can fill that out. You can give us the name, the address, the account and routing number of the bank, as well as what kind of account it is, and then attach a voided check to it, provide it to James's shop, and they can get you set up. Or you can have your bank fill it out, which is why there's that signature block on the bottom. You know, take it to your bank branch, have someone certify that this is your account, and then you give us the form and you don't have to provide us a voided check. Either way, it'll get you to the same result. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about farm and tract. You know, FSA farm numbers are just for us and they're unique to county. So like there will be a Maui County Farm 1, or there used to be, just like there will be a Kauai County Farm 1. But within Maui County, there will only be one Farm 1 at any given time. And so that's our unique identifier as we build these farms and tracts throughout the islands. So let me give you a couple of definitions first. An operator, that's what we actually call a farmer. It's an individual entity or joint operation who is in general control of the farming operations on the farm for the current year. Owner, obviously they own the ground. I will also mention one that's not on here. We call them an other tenant. So that means somebody that is on the farm isn't the operator, but is still conducting farming operations. From where I am from in Washington State, what we saw most commonly there was a row crop operation where there is a cowboy that is taking the hay pastures on the side, or doing something like that. The cowboy doesn't have control of all the wheat ground, but they are putting up hay or letting their cattle run on stuff that is owned by the owner. We consider them an other tenant, and they are more than eligible for all of our programs. So a farm is made up of tracts that have the same owner and the same operator. A tract is a unit on contiguous land that is both under one ownership and operated as a farm or a part of a farm. And a field is actually, you know, the actual crop field. Small, we call them polygons, but it's going to be the borders of where you have your green onions or your sweet potatoes or what have you. So one of the main things that we need all across the board is land documentation. So we need the copy of the land documents which show that the applicant has control of the farmland. You know, some of those examples are deeds, land purchase contracts, county land record documents, TMKs, leases, rental agreements with valid terms and signatures by the operator and the owner. Other types of legal documentation, anything that shows that you are supposed to be out where you are. And what's very important, and if you applied for the livestock forage program in the last year, this was probably something that James had to talk to you about. Not that you were doing it wrong, just something that we had to do, which is that if you have a lease, the name on the land document must match exactly the name of the applicant requesting benefits. So if I come into James's office and I want to apply as Patrick Lewis, but all my leases read Patrick Lewis Farming LLC, we got to figure that out. And so whether that's we determine who is really farming on the ground or I go get my leases adjusted, you know, that is an issue to us. So just something to be aware of, that you should have time to go work on those, but the names on the two documents will need to match. So we're going to take all this information that you give us, and we're going to delineate the farm area and all the fields within the farm on the map. And then on that map, it's going to generate the farm number. So when you're done with this process, we're going to give you a map with a number and all the fields delineated on it. The one thing I will mention is that our imagery is not Google Maps imagery. If you go Google your farm right now, what we're going to print out for you is 6 to 10 years old, maybe a little bit newer, maybe a little bit older. So just be cognizant that it might not look the same, or we might not have caught up with a barn or corral or something that you put up, processing shed, something in between. But it's the best we're going to be able to do, and for our purposes, it's going to work just fine.
Patrick, I'm curious
Oh,
about how long does a typical, application process? I know that we don't know what CARES with the CFAP really. I'm just curious, hour, 2, 3, what do you think?
It's really going to depend on how diverse your operation is. If you have one crop and you've had one crop, it should not take you very much time. We are going to need production evidence. We may just be doing a self-certification. We're not 100% sure. But if you have a diverse operation, multiple kinds of livestock, maybe you have some crops on the side, it's going to take you more time. So I think if you came in, if you have never seen us before, and you have one crop or you have a bunch of crops, your first time with us is not going to be quick. And it's probably going to be a couple of hours, and we're probably not going to be done at the end of it. But that's okay.
But it would make sense to do that now to get established, because when this program comes out in 2 weeks, a month, whenever it comes out, then you'll be ready for it. And the reason I bring that up is because, like Wayne mentioned, I think what did you say, 11 days, Wayne? Is that what the first $350 billion went out the door in 11 days? And so what we really want is our Maui County farmers to get ready now, so that when the thing comes out, you're ready to go. You don't when the gun goes off, you should already have all your ducks in a row. And that's what we're aiming to do here.
That's an excellent point. And the one thing that I would add too is, sorry about that, is our programs are not first come, first serve. So for the most part, our programs have longer sign-up periods, and everyone that applies gets what they are eligible for, or a portion of it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, you do not have to be the first person in the door the morning that we start sign up.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that you have any better shot.
But if you're on the EIDL or PPP, I think Wayne will agree that it's time to pull the trigger if you decide that's the one for you. So we have one more program that we thought it was important to talk about today. We've got the EIDL, the PPP, and the CFAP. We've also got the state, but then there's also the USDA Microloan program, and I'm going to throw this over to you, buddy. Let's go to the next slide. I'll just lead it with there's this chart here, and it's got it's more than 1 page long, and if you want to download it, the links are right there and available for you. But you can see that the farm loans, there's many different kinds of them, and microloan is just one of them. Buddy, do you want to talk about the microloan program and what that's for, and any tips you can give us on that one?
Yeah, thank you. The microloan program is very similar to any of the rest of our programs, except it's just for smaller volume. A little less paperwork. Bottom line, what you heard today is, as farmers, we need to track our production. Last I had checked, revenue, no matter what we do in business, no matter where we're at, is all about volume times price. So that's very key to all of the programs and what you will ever deal with as entrepreneurs in any kind of business. So anyway, the microloan program. The microloan program is $50,000 or less. It still requires you to give us some information so that we can basically look at your operation and help you project your future. One of the nice things about the programs is the fact is it'll fit into about anything you're going to do. Once you raise something, once you grow something, we can help you take it right to the consumer's mouth. So as we go into value added, as we go into getting closer to the consumer, like I said earlier, great opportunity we're seeing because we now are closer to the consumer than we've ever been in agriculture. It's about becoming price makers versus being price takers, and the loan program can help you get there. Of course, it's not free money. You got to pay it back. It's designed, though, for when things get tough, we have the opportunity to restructure you and set you in a better position. My job is to get you profitable so that you do not borrow money from the government. You can go to a bank. So it supplements all programs, supplements the EQIP program from NRCS. If you need funds in order to do a grant, you need funds to do a fencing project, you need funds to work with any of the other programs that you're coming across. And during these tough times, this program is designed to help you with that. So the microloan program is just a smaller version thereof. We can help you with family living. We can help you with organics, you name it, we can help you get there once you grow something. So you have to be a farmer and you have to be for profit. I saw the question from Jay Pell. Bottom line is, yeah, you have to be for profit because it's going to take profit for you to get to a point where you can go to the commercial lending sector or go out on your own. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much the program. We can also have a program in which we can work with banks, help you participate. We can do $600,000 for farm ownership. We can use that. You can use that for a down payment. I do not need your firstborn. All I need is whatever you put up, whatever we're financing, we can use that for collateral. So very, very open program. I wouldn't be here unless it wasn't a very open program. My history in agriculture has been such it's here to make farmers profitable. So that's the brunt of the program.
Hey, buddy, if I wanted to apply for a microloan, how long does the actual application process take, and how long does it take typically from the time when the loan's approved to the time, or from how, like, what is the time frame on these? I'm curious.
Well, bottom line, as soon as I get it, if you come in and meet with us, well, obviously you can't come in and meet with us right now, but we have a lot of great tools like Zoom and programs such as this. But give me an hour and a half with you. We'll have a complete application. 2 weeks later, probably you'll have approval or shorter. Then within 2 days, we're moving and we're going, and end of story. All comes down to ability to get the information, and the information is simple. It's strictly business.
Right.
Balance sheet, projection, and what's your history over the last 2 or 3 years? Because we all know in business that unless I change something, probably my history is going to dictate my future. So we look for your history and see if we can help you predict your future. So yeah, 2 to 3 weeks, end of story.
Well, thank you all for participating in this. That was a lot of information, but like I say, you can watch this over and over again. And if I was filling out the application, I might watch the video and pause it and fill it out. Watch the video, pause it, and fill it out. I find this a very helpful tool. And thank you guys so much for your time and effort in this. Here's a couple of helpful links for you guys. There's www.farmers.gov. Buddy, what am I going to find there? I'm looking at www.farmers.gov. That's listed as a helpful link. What do we do, Patrick or James? What's at that site?
Yeah, I'll jump in for you, buddy. So farmers.gov has kind of become our go-to for FSA for information. So anything that happens with the CFAP, the coronavirus program, is going to go on there. There's a link that if you're on another island, you can find the service center there. Any of our program information is going to go there. So that's really become a one-stop shop for us. Okay.
And then the next one, the PPP application and EIDL application videos and PowerPoints. So, see how you guys are writing questions over here in the side. What we did is we went back and answered a whole bunch of questions. So that MauiBizAssist.com website has 3, and tomorrow it's going to have 4 because it's going to have this one as well. But there's an application walkthrough for the PPP, an application walkthrough for the EIDL. And when you get your PPP, there's also a video there that helps you get maximum forgiveness out of it. We put a link there, Brain Gain Hawaii. There's a lot of resources there. They're documents, and so you can take a look at them. They've done a really good job of trying to analyze the guidance that has come down because it's not easy to decipher. and they've done a really good job there. And then the COVID-19 Maui Nui website, take a look at that one. That's within Maui County. It's a great website, and it just gives you some useful information. Our contact information is on the next slide. It is, I got the Farm Service Agency at the top. You've got the phone numbers there. There's also a slide earlier on that gives individual phone numbers. There's James and Buddy's emails, and their address. There's the website, and then there's Wayne's phone number, Wayne's email, and Wayne's website, and then my phone number, my email, and my website. And that's what we've got. So now we would like to answer some questions that people have. Honestly, I'm going down this list, and it looks like they've been answered quite a bit. I want to hit this top one. I did make some comments on there, but I'm going to read this one. It says, "I hope you will address new businesses that were in the process of being developed just before the shutdown." Wayne, did Wayne drop off? I don't see Wayne. So if Wayne got thrown out, I'm gonna answer that. The answer is the business has to be in operation with employees by February 15th, 2020, and that is for the PPP. And that's, you're going to have to somehow verify that there were employees, and an easy way to do that is through the 941, the form 941. Again, my numbers there. If I didn't get that question, then or if I didn't get that answer right, but the business has to be in business by that time and had to have employees, and there's ways to verify that. Here's the next question. It says, "We applied to the EIDL 320 and just received an email." It looks like Wayne answered that one too. Hey,
Gerry.
Yeah.
Gerry, if you go to the new questions, there's ones that haven't been answered yet.
Oh, I
and
see.
there's I'll answer. I'll post
Sure.
a question. This would be good for Patrick, James, or Buddy to answer. Our farm employs workers via Worldwide Farmers Exchange, so our employee is not a US citizen. Does that disqualify them for any assistance? And you need to unmute yourself. Yep.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, the farm workers themselves probably aren't going to be eligible to participate in the program. It would be the actual farming entity or the person that hires the workers. And each program, like I mentioned real briefly, carries with it some different rules about whether or not we will allow a foreign person to participate. Some do, some don't. So we just don't know quite yet what the answer on that is going to be. But I'll be happy to circle back around to Gerry and company when we know, so that they can disseminate that information.
Great. And then another question from Tammy. 5-acre land was purchased in July 2019, now developing a permaculture farm. I'm gathering from a previous question, this is sort of after a particular date. She says she can't survive long on savings and can't start planting either. What's probably, out of all the various programs, what's the best solution?
That might be a good, just to jump in real briefly, that might be a good opportunity to give Buddy a call with the business plan and say, this is what we're trying to do, and see if there's something that we can go at from that standpoint.
Great. And then there's one final question I saw from Paige for Buddy. So if you just want to unmute yourself, Buddy, do you have terms and rates, or does it depend on, is it dependable on the business, on the type of loan? Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, terms of rates are operating terms is 7 years. Rates is 1.75 right now. That's for a 7-year loan. Then for real estate, it's 40 years. The rate right now is 2.625. Of course, this is the first round of rate changes since the feds had knocked Treasury bills down to zero. So can only hope for the best. After this, I've seen it as low as 1.1. So right now, they're all reasonable.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just moving quickly because I'm wary of our time. We do have two questions about commercial fishing or fishing. Does that count? Is that included in any of these programs?
Fishing. Fish.
So historically, FSA hasn't dealt with commercial fishing. So at least from our standpoint, that's probably not going to be something that we can assist with. So I'm sorry about that.
Although I would say that I see absolutely no reason why the PPP and EIDL aren't open to fishermen. I know they're open to aquaculture. So PPP and EIDL, that might be what you might be looking for. And it depends on whether you're a sole proprietor or whether you have employees too. So there's a lot of complications. I'd be happy to look into that one any further if you guys, if whoever wrote that one wants to give me a call.
From the loan side, from the loan side, if you breed fish, if you're a fish breeder, and basically taking them from like shrimp and everything else that we have, particularly on the other islands, that makes just like cattle. You breed fish, no different. So if you're a breeder, that's something different. That works for the farm loan program.
And I just apologize also, Wayne might be able to respond there as well. He was dropped from the call, some technological problems. So we have some other questions there. We're going to answer those either directly via email or on our Q&A page. So I'm going to close up the webinar, and thank you so much to our guest speakers that have joined us today. We really appreciate your time, Patrick, James, and Buddy. Wealth of information there, and you've got the contacts there in the handouts. We've pushed all the handouts that are there for you on the call. We've got the slide deck. We've got a couple of the fact sheets. We've also got a PowerPoint that Buddy had put together that had more information that we couldn't squeeze all into this presentation. So some more further resources, and keep an eye out for our email, which will let you know when the replay is available, plus further resources and the Q&A put on our website. So thank you so much again for joining us, and we wish you the very best with these programs, and I hope it works out for you. Mahalo.
Mahalo, everyone, for coming.